6 months after its initial release, I decided to fork up the $10 to upgrade my copy of The Last of Us 2 to its PS5 remaster. I did this entirely and specifically for one reason: no return. I'm a big-time lover of Rogue-affiliated games, both likes and lights. Currently installed on my PlayStation are, in order, The Last of Us 2, Returnal, Enter the Gungeon, Balatro, Risk of Rain 2. So, yeah, long story short, I like the genre. I have a pretty good feel for what makes these games worth playing, and more importantly, worth playing again and again. For the uneducated, a roguelike is a genre of video game built on two simple principles: procedural generation and permadeath. Randomized levels, weapons, enemies, challenges, gadgets, gizmos, and doodads. If you die, you're dead. Back to the beginning you go. This process is called a run. A roguelite, on the other hand, follows the same principles with a key difference: meta progression. Essentially, you can invest during your current run to permanently upgrade your future runs, unlock permanent buffs, new weapons, shortcuts, and improve your chances at ultimately beating the game. There's a ton of people who will argue that those definitions aren't accurate, and honestly, maybe. Anyway, I purchased this upgrade to play the roguelike mode, so how is it? Well, no return succeeds when you crave small, bite-sized chunks of The Last of Us 2's mostly great combat. The sheer satisfaction of turning a clicker into a creamy mushroom risotto is unreal. There's a healthy amount of characters, weapons, and enough randomization to keep you interested for at least 40 hours if my playtime's anything to go off of. However, I can't shake the hunch that it feels rushed. To keep the food analogy rolling, this croissant is, how you say, undercooked. Where no return starts to fall apart, like a soggy croissant, is pretty much all of the in-between stuff. The relatively small pool of arenas, the characters' lack of distinct playstyles, and the gambits and modifiers that only rarely change the pace of gameplay. All of these are well-intentioned, and I'm sure for many it's a perfectly satisfying way to shake up an experience they already enjoy. But I'm a capital G gamer, and I think there's quite a few steps that could have been taken to turn this experience into something worth returning to over and over again. One last thing before I start digging in here. Game design's hard. Implementing brand new modes and features into a game in order to squeeze out profit for your shareholders is hard. Meeting strict deadlines by working unimaginable hours at the expense of your personal life is hard. In no way am I criticizing the devs, and instead I am criticizing a product that I purchased. Much love. Oh yeah, and also I'm assuming you've played No Return before. Okay, thanks. Part 1! My critiques! I think a great example of my point here starts with the playable characters. There's 12, but you'd be hard-pressed to find any real differences between them other than brings a friend and can't use a core mechanic of the game's combat. Some of them start with a unique skill tree or have their own otherwise unobtainable weapon, but you're still going to spend the majority of your time behind a waist-high wall ready to greet the next person you see with a Hershey Yuengling bottle to the dome piece. Picking a character based on their playstyle is more of a nudge in that direction, which I'd actually say is a good way to design your characters if they didn't all end up playing the same anyway. If you're performing even moderately well, if you scavenge at all during your missions, you'll have enough materials to purchase and craft an arsenal fit for a small war. It doesn't matter if your character starts with craftable Molotovs if I can just purchase that upgrade after a single round, you know? Here's a better example. Lev is supposed to be the stealth character, right? You start with a bow and a little less health, and some traits to enforce the bow as your main weapon. I bought a shotgun round 2 and never touched my bow again, until I got the explosive arrow recipe. And it's not because I dislike the stealth playstyle, I actually like it a lot, but it's because Big Shotgun is good and available. Choosing the stealth character influenced a single round, and even then, I used a brick and melee for half of my kills. I'm being harsh. Not all of the traits are bad, and some of them do briefly change the way that you'll interact with a level or two. I particularly like Marlene because her main gimmick revolves around completing very specific challenges that pop up during your missions. If you don't, you get no resources for completing the mission. It creates these super tense moments where the timer's ticking down, you only have one pistol round, and a missed headshot likely means the end of your run, or at least a very difficult uphill battle afterwards. I like Marlene's playstyle because it forces you to play the game differently with an actual consequence for not performing. None of the other characters do that, really. Like, Dina's playstyle is centered around crafting, and you start with recipes for 2 different kinds of bombs. But by round 3, you're very likely holding onto a near identical loadout as any of the other characters would. Yara starts with Lev as a companion, which is neat in concept, but more often than not, you don't feel the impact of Lev's existence. And when you do, it's usually because he killed the person you were trying to achieve your gambit with. God damn it! Don't even get me started on Joel, Tommy, and Bill. What do you mean they can't dodge? Sturdy against melee? I guess I'll just power my spine through the blade of your axe. The modifiers that appear, much like the characters, feel a little underbaked. At their best, enemies become invisible, tripwires are placed around the map, and Molotovs rain from the sky. At their worst, you can't see the game. The color filter ones are especially bad. How is it challenging or interesting to make my screen red? What I really wanted out of modifiers was a unique form of road blocking, and sometimes they do that. Unlocking all crafting recipes, having enemies move at twice the speed, dropping all leftover ammo when you reload. These rock and create interesting mix-ups of encounters you may be familiar with if you've played the main game. I think I wanted bigger changes, though. Mix human enemies with infected. Make me play King of the Hill for a particular area of the map. Stuff like that. Modifiers rarely pack the punch that I was looking for, which, funnily enough, I got from Gambits with Marlene. I'd really like for these to drastically shake up the foundation of a round, make you do things that you're not comfortable doing, but all too often they're stains that blemish an otherwise very appealing canvas. I have a similar issue with enemy factions. There's next to no difference between fighting the WLF, Seraphites, or the Rattlers, and nearly every infected encounter plays out almost exactly the same every time, regardless of what arena or modifiers you have on. Occasionally, you'll get a wave of body-armored clickers or a large lad with a large axe, but in your moment-to-moment gameplay, you won't notice a difference. I do like fighting the Seraphites and having to rip arrows out, but when the solution to every human enemy is... it's hard to appreciate whether they're WLF, Seraphite, or the UPS guy. That's a running theme of the mode, unfortunately. No Return's existence feels strung together with ideas rather than being designed from the ground up. Reusing levels and enemies in a new format is totally understandable, and I've even wanted some kind of horde mode for The Last of Us since the first game's initial release. I was a COD Zombies kid, leave me alone. However, when modifiers rarely impact gameplay at large, and when characters all feel the same, and when you fight the same people with guns or 3 infected types, and to top it all off, my only reward for all those things is a jacket that looks worse than the character's original outfit, it leads back to that feeling of being undercooked.
Part 2! My changes!
All of that being said, I still put nearly 50 hours into it. I'll likely keep it installed to pick up and play on occasion, and I'll likely use the custom run feature to avoid the mission types and modifiers that I don't like. When the game offers tools to improve your experience, use them. I can't say that I dislike No Return because I like The Last of Us 2's combat. More of that combat in digestible pieces without having to commit to being invested or not in a story is objectively a good thing for me. Let's assume we were to hypothetically get another attempt at No Return's structure in the future. Here's the kind of changes I would like to see from a project like that. Hear me out. Less characters. Wait! Okay. There's 12 characters in the current game, and none of them feel particularly different from one another. So, what if there's 4 characters, and each one of them plays drastically different? I'm picturing 4 distinct playstyles that each highlight different elements of the game. A scrappy survivalist who uses every resource possible to scrape together solutions. A brute who mainly uses melee weapons but is incredibly efficient up close. Someone who starts with a partner to assist in combat and gather resources. and somebody who needs to do specific challenges in order to get upgrade resources, but gets more than anyone else if they do. Now, all of those archetypes exist in the current game, and I bet you're thinking, why remove options from the player? Shh, my sweet summer child. With less surface level options to the player, design can be tighter and accommodate for what the player is capable of at all times. Sandbox style games are my personal favorite design philosophy, but for cinematic action fest like The Last of Us, I don't think you need a sandbox. I think you need cooler sand castles. Sand. Having only a few playable characters could also allow for other characters to be skins, which personally I'd much prefer to unlock than rain jacket. Moving on. I'd also really like to see the way the player transitions between levels changed. Going back to the safe house in between every mission is incredibly tedious, and for me, it really works against my interest in the run. Because, ultimately, I'm gonna go back to the safe house, spend every ounce of resource that I have available, and pick the next mission based on what I think will be the most fun or easiest to accomplish. I've completed less than 5 holdout missions because they suck and are bad. That's not an interesting decision that I'm making to increase my enjoyment. It's a desperate flee from a mission type that I strongly dislike. In order to fix this, I suggest 2 things. Continuous levels. I actually don't have that big of an issue with how many arenas are in No Return. They're varied enough and serve their job as a versatile play space. However, imagine finishing a mission and deciding whether you'll walk through a level gate to a safe house to resupply and upgrade your gear, or choosing to go straight into another level and receive more rewards for doing so. Imagine loading into a run, seeing your first mission is in Jackson, and potentially knowing that you'll have to go towards a ski lodge or the cabin afterwards. Obviously, I'm not suggesting some kind of massive open world, but I feel like we're brought back to the safe house far too often. Speaking of the safe house, in No Return, there's 3 different currencies. Tokens for purchasing new weapons and items, supplements for upgrading your character, and weapon parts for upgrading your weapons. I don't think you should have access to all 3 of those every time that you're at a safe house. My mouth waters at the idea of walking from one mission to another, finding a workbench along the way, and having to rely on my powerful weapons with very other little resource at my disposal. Or even the opposite, where I have enough resources to upgrade myself across the board, but I am desperately searching for the correct outlet for my currency. There's one more thing that I actually thought of while writing this script. Mid-run bosses. Those armored clickers I mentioned earlier gave me a real surprise first time I saw them. I would love if there was a chance to encounter a mini-boss, something like these guys, in regular intervals. Fighting human enemies with a single bloater who appears and causes havoc could be amazing. I hope that all of this is illustrating the point that, with a few tweaks to the formula, combined with The Last of Us 2's very satisfying combat, No Return could be something really special. Whenever I play it, I just want more. More interesting scenarios and split-second decisions to make. More enemy variety. More excuses to put aside what I'm working on and sit and play a sick game with my sick wife. Sick isn't awesome, by the way, she's perfectly healthy. If you're happy with The Last of Us 2's combat, and you enjoy watching zombies get shredded like a rotisserie chicken, No Return is a relatively satisfying experience that you might thoroughly enjoy. I'd love to play more video games with you, but for now, I've got a pretty big thing I've got to get back to working on. What was that again? Right. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I've been trying to make YouTube videos for nearly 15 years at this point. I used to have a Let's Play show with a friend way back in the day. I never learned how to do any of the editing myself, and since then I've been trying to make my own for the better part of 15 years now. I keep getting self-conscious, or I'm a perfectionist and I can't decide when it's good enough, or whatever, but this time I really decided to just go for it. I gave myself 3 weeks to make this video. That included recording gameplay, coming up with the idea, writing the script, and then I spent about 3 days actually editing the video. So I'm over the first hump, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it greatly. My name is Darren. This has been The Narrative. See you later.